these conversations, I've learned. So
We're
live.
Great.
Hey, good morning, Dr. Chaffee. Thank you very much. Rob Kiltz. We're sharing on, Dr. Kiltz YouTube and See My Fertility YouTube. And hopefully it's going to be broadcast on Facebook also. But I never know on these technical errors. Yesterday I came home, I had alarms going off. I had nothing else. But we're going to continue the conversations. And I was blessed to be interviewed by Dr. Chaffee. And we're going to basically continue the conversation. And let's hear more about your side of things. And Plant-Free MD, is that, do I have the right handle? And I apologize if I don't.
No, that's it. Yeah, Plant-Free MD is my podcast. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this mess of carnivore and health and wellness.
Yeah. Well, I was born and raised in America, but I played rugby in the U.S. and I was an All-American in high school, and then traveled around as a late teenager and an adult, traveling, playing around the world, and absolutely loved it. Ended up going to medical school in Europe after I finished playing professionally over there, and always was interested in diet and nutrition just because of my interest in medicine and biology, but also because of athletics. I always wanted to be able to eat the right thing to fuel my body so I could perform the best. And so I got into this in a very strange way. I was taking cancer biology at the University of Washington in Seattle, and we were learning that plants use poisons to defend themselves, which is actually something that I remember learning in 7th and 8th grade biology as well. That plants and animals are in an evolutionary arms race. Plants becoming more and more poisonous, so less and less animals can eat them so they can survive and thrive. And then animals becoming adapted to specific poisons and specific plants so they can eat that plant and nothing else can. So that's their dedicated food source. That's something I remember quite clearly learning in junior high biology. And then we're sort of reiterating this in my upper division level cancer biology class, but looking at it specifically from a cancer standpoint. So we were looking at all the different carcinogens that were in vegetables. And we learned, this is now 22 years ago that I took this, they had already identified 136 known human carcinogens just in Brussels sprouts, and over 100 just in white mushrooms, and then spinach, kale, lettuce, celery, cabbage, cucumber, broccoli, everything that we would find at a store. They all had 60 or 80 or over 100 known human carcinogens each, and they were quite abundant. We knew this from work from Professor Bruce Ames from Berkeley. In 1989, he published a large work showing that there are 10,000 times more naturally occurring poisons, insecticides, pesticides in plants and vegetables like spinach than the pesticides we spray on them by weight. So the natural insecticides outweighed the commercial insecticides, and that the natural poisons were far more likely to cause cancer than the pesticides we sprayed on them. This is why we still have pesticides, because they did this research. They were trying to ban all these things, and they did the research and said, well, actually, it's a drop in the bucket if you're actually going to eat the plant in the first place. So we were quite blown away by this. And, I remember looking around just wildly. I was like, you must be joking. I was looking around for like a TA who was like smirking in the corner or something like that, who was in on the joke, but there was no one. And I just sort of dawned on me like, man, this guy's serious. But I still thought in my head, I was like, okay, but vegetables are still good for you though, right? And he just must have, read my mind, because he just looked at us and he said, I don't eat salad. I don't eat vegetables. I don't let my kids eat vegetables. Plants are trying to kill you. So
and
I was like, right.
How long ago was this?
22 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And so, I heard that. I was just like, right, screw plants. I'm just not going to eat those things. And, I went to the store. I went shopping after that. And I was just looking around. I was like, everything has a plant in it. Everything's plant-based. Just everything. And I was just looking around. I was just like, plants, pasta, rice, vegetables, obviously, produce aisle. And I came around some eggs. I was like, okay, eggs, right? Eggs don't come from a plant. Fine. And meat doesn't come from a plant. Okay. And milk doesn't come from a plant. And I just ate eggs, meat, and milk for the next 5 years. And I was playing, the top grade rugby in the U.S. and at the collegiate level and the men's level. Played in the national, the first, the Super League in America, Division I America, and the Canadian Premiership as well. I toured with the junior national team down in New Zealand. And so I was playing sports at a very high level. I was at the University of Washington at the time. So, I woke up in the morning, go to class. As soon as I was done with class, I was straight into rugby training with my collegiate team. And then as soon as I was done with my collegiate team, I'd go to the men's team. And so I was just training, for 6-7 hours a day, every day. And then I'd have 2-3 games on the weekend. I'd play as many games as I could. And when I switched over to just stop the plants, like my performance just went into the stratosphere. I stopped. I couldn't get tired anymore. I couldn't run out of energy. I couldn't get sore anymore. I wasn't getting sore after working out. I don't get sore anymore after I work out. And that's something that I've noticed is directly to do with different things we eat. Generally, like grains, carbs, beans, those will really kick off the delayed onset muscle soreness. Coffee too. Coffee's a bean though, so that's it's going to have similar sort of things. And so I just felt absolutely amazing. And then I was in England playing professionally, and I sort of started slipping off of it because some of the meat was breaded. I didn't really have the same access to meat that I did in America. And a lot of people get mad at me when, in England. It's like, well, we have great meat in England. It's really good quality here. You just didn't go to the right butcher. And I'm like, okay, maybe where you live, but where I was, it really sucked. And like, whatever it was, like it wouldn't cook right. I don't know if they like injected water into it or something like that, but I try to like cook it up and like grill it or fry it. And it wouldn't brown. It just would not brown. It just turned gray and sweaty. And so I was trying to get it brown on each side, but it wouldn't brown. And it ended up being well done, but still just gray and sweaty on the sides and just cooked all the way through. I'm like, well, that's gross. And so I could not cook these things properly. And so, I'm sure it was mostly to do with me, but whatever it was, I couldn't do it. And so I was getting meat that was like pre-cooked and sort of breaded. And I was like, ooh, is it going to make that big of a difference? And I was like, well, maybe it's just a little bit, so it's not that big of a deal. But, I absolutely that was when I started noticing a difference in my performance and my health.
From your team, when you were on this carnivore lifestyle, doing rugby at an early age, it sounds like, what did your teammates and other people think about that? Were they thinking you're crazy? Were they interested? What was the thoughts?
Yeah, well, that was the thing. Like, I never really thought of it as like a carnivore diet. I just knew that I wasn't going to eat plants. And my best friend, growing up, we played rugby together. He got me into rugby. I told him at the time, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to eat any of these things. And that was when, Atkins was sort of making a revival. And he was saying, it's like, oh yeah, well, a lot of people are ditching carbs anyway. So, that could just roll into this. And so, I just, he knew that I was doing it, but he didn't really tried it himself because I didn't think of it as like, wow, this is making a big performance enhancement. I also stopped, drinking during the season at that time too. And I attributed a lot of this to just not drink. It was obviously has a huge benefit as well. I only drank once a week just after rugby games. We would go out and we'd have a big party and we drink, but then it would take like 3-4 days just to recover from that one night out. And I'd still be feeling it halfway through the week at training. And so, that obviously is going to affect you quite significantly. And so when I stopped doing that, I was recovering the next day. I felt better. And so I thought, wow, that's such a big difference. So the timing was such that I didn't realize how big of an effect dropping the plants had on my health. So I never really brought it up that much. And it's like now, because I know what I'm doing a carnivore diet and I don't eat for these sorts of reasons, it just comes up more. I don't know why, but back then, I did this for 5 years and like no one said a thing ever. I was like, oh yeah, no, I'm just eating this. I just never said anything. I just ate what I ate, and then people just left me alone. It was weird.
So were you conscious of it back then in the sense of what you're teaching and sharing today? What got you to finally the bulb went off and say, okay, I'm going to focus on this and I want to teach this in a way that I can help my fellow humans improve their lives.
Yeah, well,
What brought that?
it's yeah, well, it sort of was a buildup over the next 20 years of my undergraduate education, my own personal research, and then in medical school and beyond. The different discoveries come out, with Dr. Robert Lustig out of UCSF, with his work on fructose and showing that this had was more likely to be involved in heart disease than just fat and cholesterol. Then all the information coming out about how the cholesterol model of heart disease was not only wrong but fraudulent, and a lot of other things that just came out as well. And then just obviously, we've been taught since we were kids that humans are apex predators, top of the food chain. Apex predators don't graze. Lions don't eat grass, and dolphins don't eat kelp to get roughage. And so when you're top of the food chain, you eat animals. And then I came across Dr. Baker on the Joe Rogan podcast, and that, watching him for 5 minutes, I was like, this guy is more right than he knows. And just everything just clicked in, because all the different things that I knew about, plants being toxic, fructose actually being a big player in metabolic disease, and cholesterol just not actually being a problem. That fed in with everything that he was talking about on Joe Rogan's podcast. And so I was just like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. And when I started looking at medicine from that perspective of, humans are animals, and the kind of animal that we are carnivores, and we're carnivores that are not living and eating as carnivores. And so we're getting diseases from that. Like if you were feeding, grains, a lot of grains to a bear or a wolf or a dog or a cat, they're going to get fat, they're going to get diabetes, they're going to get autoimmune diseases, and same as, any sort of zoo animal. You talk to any zookeeper who's worth their salt, they'll tell you, you feed an animal something that it doesn't eat in the wild, something it didn't evolve on, it gets sick. But what does it get sick with? It's obesity, heart disease, liver disease, diabetes, cancer, autoimmune diseases, arthritis, all the same things that we get, all the same things that dogs and cats get when given kibble as opposed to meat, which is what they're supposed to eat. And so when I just started looking at that, at human medicine from that perspective, things just started slotting into place, and everything just started making a lot more sense. And so I really just started, just really digging into the research, and started just trying to read as much as I could and see, okay, what do we know? What can we prove? What have we discovered? What, remains to be discovered? And I just started finding, more and more. Obviously found all the, the pioneers, such as, Dr. J.H. Salisbury and Stefansson, and what's his name? He wrote the Stone Age Diet in 1975. As recently as 1975, doctors were publishing these things. Well, and so
yeah, it's sort of like we're running into it, but how did we not see it before? But I'm still amazed that the professor that taught you that plants were poisonous, and you were able to see that. I'm assuming that was in college, not too long ago, right? In all of this. So what do you think is the biggest roadblock and barrier to the sharing of this story and getting people to believe it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just the inertia that's behind, meat being bad for you, meat causing cancer, cholesterol and saturated fat causing heart disease and diabetes and obesity. There's a lot behind this, and there's a lot of money behind it as well. There's been a lot of, ads and propaganda that have just come out over the last, really like 60 years or plus. And so it's difficult because now everyone knows it. Once everyone knows it, it's hard to sort of, go against that. And, I talk to people as well, and they go on a carnivore diet and they reverse their diabetes. They come off their medications. They come off their high blood pressure medications. And I was just talking to, someone that was helping out on social media today. And he said he went to his endocrinologist, and his HbA1c went from 9.3 down to 6.1 since December, right? And his endocrinologist was like, "Wow, you haven't really seen this." And he said, but she was just like, "Yeah, no, but you can't eat red meat. Red meat's really bad for you. You need to stop eating red meat, and you need to stop eating high fat and this, that, and the other." And he just asked her, he's like, But have you ever seen someone reverse diabetes? And she said, no, I've never seen that. It doesn't happen. And he's like, okay, but I've just done it. You've just seen the results. So why are you telling me to stop doing what got me these results? And she just this, and you're saying that red meat's bad for me, but I'm getting good results. So like, what's the evidence to say that red meat's bad for me? Like, why are, what's behind that? And she just like dismissed him and just said, I just don't, we don't have time to talk about this. We have nutritionists if you want to talk to them, but I don't have time to talk about this right now. So basically, she didn't know what she was talking about. She was just, speaking, out of nowhere, and wasn't able to back it up, and didn't feel like admitting that. And that's unfortunately a problem with doctors, a lot of doctors as well, is that we regurgitate a lot of these things, and because we're doctors, obviously it's correct. But a lot of these things are just nonsense, and we didn't learn it in medical school. I don't remember being taught that red meat causes cancer or any of these sorts of things in medical school. I don't remember being taught nearly anything about nutrition in medical school besides some simple biochemistry sides of things. But these are just things that get we've had regurgitated to us in society for so long, and then when we go through medical school, we just go, oh yeah, yes, that's true, and I'm a doctor. But we didn't learn that in medical school. We weren't taught that in medical school. That was just something that everyone knows, and so it's
the pervasive story that's there so often that you just believe it, and it's like politics, religion, and everything in our culture is based on our belief systems, and so science science is really snake oil like anything else.
Mm-hmm.
It's a marketing ploy, and so how does it make you feel in sort of when you hear the story of the patient talking to the doctor, and the doctor says, you're wrong, and doesn't want to listen to it? And what are your thoughts and idea how we can all improve the sort of I guess the right word is recruiting followers into this world? In essence, we're telling a story also, but what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, and I think it just plays into your previous question is that we just have to educate people, and we just have to show them the evidence. And when I encourage people when they're talking to their doctor, it's like, well, my cardiologist wants me to do X, Y, and Z. What can I do about it? It's like, well, you ask them why, and ask them what the evidence is for that. It's like, can you show me the evidence for that? Because I've been told by another doctor that there's evidence against it, and here are the studies. Here's the evidence. So what is your evidence? Can you show me that? And you can do it nicely, but you can ask for their evidence, and if their evidence is better than my evidence, then go with it. I don't mind that, but I'm pretty sure I'm right, and and if they have evidence that shows that I'm wrong, I'd love to see it, because I want to know what's going on. I don't actually have a dog in the fight, but just educating people and showing the actual real world results, it will just sort of make a grassroots movement, and eventually more clinicians will have to start picking this up, because there are responsible clinicians out there. I've met many doctors that have seen have spoken to me and seen my results, and listened to what I have to say, and they've completely changed the way they approach medicine and their own nutrition, and also who have had patients like my mom when she went to her doctor, and her HbA1c went from 8.9 down to 6.1 in 2 months on a carnivore diet, and her doctor was like, how the hell did you do this? What the hell did you do? Type 2 diabetes is only a progressive disease. It only gets worse. This does not go backwards. We can mitigate it and slow it down with diet and lifestyle and medications, but that's it. It only gets worse. But you don't reverse it. Like, how the hell did you do this? And my mom told her what I was doing and what my research and sort of what I was concluding. And she said, I'd really like to take a look at his research, and that's really interesting. She's a very bright lady too. She was an MD PhD from Harvard, has a PhD in biochemistry from Harvard, and I had a long conversation with her talking about, like, I think we've got biochemistry all wrong. We're calling this a fed state and this a fasting state, and I think that's completely off. I think this fasting state is our primary metabolic state. This is where all of our heavy machinery comes to bear. This is where all these things work better. And she's just sort of like, look, it's like, damn it, that's right. And she, has completely changed her practice as well in its approach to diabetes as well. So, it does happen. And when you see these real results, you know, if you're a responsible, open-minded clinician, like you have to take notice, and even if it goes against the doctrine, because as Richard Feynman says, it doesn't matter how brilliant your theory is, and it doesn't matter how smart you are. If it doesn't agree with experiment, it's wrong. And so if you're saying, oh, you have to use treatment X for diabetes is the best thing to do, and I do treatment Y, and it just completely reverses it. You can't just go, no, that's a fluke. X is the way to go. It's like, well, we've done this in real life, and Y is the way to go. And I think people, will continue to come around to that as long as just, the information keeps getting out there and people keep having the results that they will.
So keep sharing the story, encouraging people, which
Yeah.
I know through social media. I mean, this is a community sourced health and wellness care. It's a whole different game today. And we spent a lot of money to go to medical school and then our residency training. And you're learning away. But now through your experience and so many other people's experiences, that's really so critical and amazing. And here we are on let's see, Facebook, YouTube. I've got Instagram just running in the background for people that just happen to be there for whatever reason. But this is the new way. But there is that still, because of our background, the science. I think for those of us that go into medicine, it's we believe in science. There's a scientific answer to everything. And when for some reason something is opposite of the science, we're like, we don't know what to do in this. And I know that I looked at it for so long and it didn't make sense until it did. And it's kind of what you're saying. Let's see, we have Allison, Bev, Reno, Dex, Anna, and many others. And although this is partly in my world because of fertility, but I think it's in your world too. But Reno and a couple others asked, waiting for our live, does carnivore decrease my fertility? Because I've seen a decrease in my libido and I'm trying for a baby. What are your thoughts?
I wouldn't think so.
I'm opposite in that.
Yeah. I've often seen the opposite. In fact, that was why the Seventh-day Adventists originally tried to get people to stop eating meat, was because they wanted to lower your libido, and they knew that eating meat raised your libido, or at least kept it healthy. No, I've absolutely seen the opposite. So I would wonder, if they're pure carnivore, or if they're eating something else as well, or if there's something else going on in the mix. Because I was just talking to that that gentleman I was speaking to before. We spoke to his endocrinologist. He's been doing carnivore since December, and he increased his testosterone from 340 up to 450 in a few months. So this is going to optimize your hormones for both men and women, and optimize your fertility as well, I would say.
It's interesting. I was looking up abortifications and menagons, and it's I just looking at all stuff, and basically the world knew how to make people infertile and knew how to create miscarriages and abortions, and it's all plant-based science, and so men's libido got challenged, but also there are some plants that actually add estrogen and progesterone and testosterones that it may make some people, because herbal medicines, right? I mean, that's what the last number of thousands of years we've always been in looking for an herbal medicine to fix things, or to kill our neighbors or ourselves, or some ploy and play of that. What are your thoughts on? Although, let me ask a couple questions. What got you into medicine, and where you're at? And one other question came about: is your girlfriend a carnivore?
Yeah, she is. Yeah, I mean, obviously she's a convert, and she started eating more meat when we started dating, and obviously that's what I'm cooking anyway, and because I've been I know how to cook the hell out of a steak now, so they're amazing. So every time she would come over, obviously she wanted to cook what I eat what I was eating. And so she would just eat a lot more meat that way, and then would ask questions, and so would get more interested. But she was still eating other things, and then we sort of made a deal with her as I was like, okay, well, why don't you just try it like full on, for a while and see how you go. And she did it just as sort of like, on like a challenge sort of thing. But then after, a couple of months of being on it and how much better she felt, and then when she sort of slipped off of it every now and then, and she could see like how much worse she felt, and she felt like gross and sick the rest of the day when she just had a few bites of a pancake with pancakes with some like frosting and syrup on it. And she was just like, yeah, that's gross. I just felt awful. And so then she's actually seen the contrast and how much better she feels now. So now she's full on it of her own volition, which is great. As far as how I got into medicine, I was just, I was one of those ones like in the classic med school application. Like I actually wanted to be a doctor since I was a little kid. That was one of the things that, that sometimes people say on their application is it's complete garbage, but I actually did. I remember one of my earliest memories of being at my grandmother's house and just thinking like, I want to know how the human body works, like down to the molecular level. I just want to know everything about it. I want to know exactly how it works and how to fix it. And I always thought about, just surgery just being just most, just so incredible, being able to like, open someone up and fix them, go inside of them and physically fix them with your hands is just the most incredible thing that I could think of. And so that was always just something I was very fascinated by. And, as I grew up, all of my favorite classes were math and sciences. And those are really the main things that I liked taking. And so it just made sense. It was like, okay, well, this was sort of a childhood, fantasy, but at the same time, this is sort of the direction my life's taking anyway. So, we'll just keep rolling with it. And, and I'm very glad it did, because I absolutely love the profession. I love being able to help people. I love seeing patients. I love doing surgery. Absolutely love it. And you as a surgeon, like if you don't love it, you don't want to, just don't do it, but like generally people who do it really do love it and are very passionate about it. So it is something that I really enjoy doing. And, and then just having this added bonus of actually knowing how the body works pretty much down to a molecular level, at least from this point of view, has just been incredible, man. Being able to heal people and see them just reverse so many medical issues and just heal themselves without just tons of medications and surgeries that are just unnecessary, honestly. And that has been a great boon to my practice, is just being able to fix people and get to the root cause of their problems, as opposed to just sticking Band-Aids on things.
So you're in residency in neuro. What are you in residency for? Remind us again.
Neurosurgery.
Neurosurgery. And how do you interact with your patients in the discussion of the changes in our nutrition?
Yeah. So it depends. Sometimes it's not going to come up. But when people are having serious pain, back pain, radiculopathy, from pinched nerve or canal stenosis, obviously that's something that in some instances can be fixed surgically. Sometimes they can't, and sometimes you decompress their nerves or open up their canal, and their pain doesn't go away. Either because it's been compressed for so long that the nerves have permanent damage, or some other reason. But sometimes you exhaust your surgical, your surgical possibilities. And so you just basically refer them on to chronic pain and just be like, ooh, sorry about that. And they're just, getting, drugs and injections and support groups. And so for those, I just sort of mentioned like, hey, look, this is something that the different foods that you eat can cause a lot of inflammation in your body, and that can actually exacerbate pain. This is something I've noticed personally myself. And so, this can actually really help, especially carbohydrates, grains, seeds, rice, all these things, beans, it makes a big difference. And I've even spoken to people because, there's a public and a private system here in Australia. And the public system, it can actually be 4.5 years before someone can get from their referring doctor to see us in an outpatient setting. So it's when you look at when you see like the delays and like Bernie Sanders and who was it? The guy from Ted Cruz. They had a debate on healthcare systems, several years ago. I really wish I was there in the audience, because like I'd worked in both systems, and I could have really actually blown that discussion up. But one of the things they were saying, they were like, well, on average, it takes 56 days or something like that in Europe to get surgery, and here it's only like 7 days or something, or 5 days. And someone came up and said, oh, I'm from the Netherlands, and my mother got diagnosed with cancer, and she got surgery right away, and she got surgery like 2 days afterwards and stuff like that. What they don't tell you is that those 56 days are from when that you've seen the surgeon, you've seen the specialist say, yes, you need surgery. And so, we'll schedule you for surgery. This includes all like the little surgery for like, taking off a mole and things like that as well. But they don't tell you that it took you 4.5 years to get in to see the guy in the first place.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's how it is here. So it's 4.5 year waiting list to get in to see us, to get assessed for spinal surgery. And then it might be a couple months. And then we say, okay, try conservative management and different sorts of treatments. And then we say, okay, no, you need surgery. And it can be up to a year or more at that point, And so, and that, the guy from like the Netherlands or whatever, he said, oh, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. She had surgery 2 days later. Guarantee you that she was waiting for years and years and years to see a specialist, didn't get into him, and it got to the point of criticality, and she went into the emergency department, and this was now a critical, life-threatening emergency. They had this, and they go, okay, we need to take this out or she's going to die. The emergency system works quite well. If someone comes in that situation and they're going to die, they get surgery quite quickly. About 60% of our patients come in that way, with brain tumors and things like that. And that's generally how that presents anyway, because these things grow quite quickly, and all of a sudden you just get smacked with symptoms. But yeah, that's behind the scenes thing they don't tell you. But yeah, so 4.5 years these guys are waiting, and then like 3 months to get an MRI, and then another and then try to get nerve root sleeve injections for another 3 months, and then doing this, all these sorts of things. And so these guys are in pain the whole time. And so if they seem amenable to it, I'll pepper that in as well. It's like, hey, this is something you can do as well, and this can help with your pain. And some of them try it and some of them don't. But basically all the ones that have tried it, I come back and see them in 3 months and like, my pain's gone, And so it's a big one for that, especially for the chronic pain things, especially for the guys who have had surgery and have had lingering symptoms and pain after that. I find that they respond very well to dietary.
What's your best explanation to the molecular physiologic things that are happening inside the body that are reducing the pain and the symptoms that people are having?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know down to the the exact detail, but even just looking at these things from a delayed onset muscle soreness. When you work out, generally people get sore the day after, 2 days after. I don't anymore. I'm sure you don't either. But if I drink a cup of coffee, I'm sore for 2 days. If I have a bit of rice or beans or whatever, if it's like mixed into my meat, even if I'm not like eating a bite of rice, I'll be horribly sore for a couple of days. So there are inflammatory factors in these plants that are just going to latch on to this nidus of healing tissue, or something that's off, and it's just going to increase that inflammation in that area, and you're going to increase your pain response. And so if you have a damaged nerve, or you have healing muscle tissue, or even a sunburn, if I get very red in the sun, it doesn't hurt, and I can take a hot shower, it's fine. But otherwise, before I was eating, it would be very painful. And so, this is going to latch on to, healing areas of tissue, and it's just going to increase the inflammation and damage and pain. And so, I don't know exactly what the mechanism is, but I have recognized it as being there just from my own experience with myself and with patients.
It's kind of like a car or plane or whatever you're using in life. You don't have to know how it works or why it works.
Yeah.
You just know that the story is it works. And I think that's why so many scientists are so, and doctors, it just it doesn't make sense, or we need to see the scientific reason why. and then I'll believe it. Rather than it's somehow this is the holy grail if you think about it for health and wellness is a a proper human diet, as Ken Berry likes to use the term, is really a carnivore. Although I was thinking about keto, carnivore, Atkins, paleo, no matter what words we use, it's still a label that's hard for people to understand what it really is. Because, I do carnivore, but for me, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm 66. I've got problems, but physically really very little. But from time to time, I will eat. I did have an avocado yesterday, which was very unusual. And I occasionally eat French fries dipped in mayonnaise, and I will rarely drink a little bit of wine or and coffee is the thing that I probably drink more than anything else, which I know what it is. But I add butter, and personally, I enjoy it. I've been off of it for a year. I went off of it for 6 months last year. And so we each have to find the thing, but it's the labels. And so really, because I know when I ask someone, well, what did you eat? They usually go into what they're not eating, or they're eating healthy. And so it's a hard thing for people to really give the things. How do you address that? Again, we talked about carnivore and someone trying to get pregnant, but what does carnivore really even mean? What does it mean to you?
Yeah. Well, I think of it as much as what not to eat as what to eat. Obviously, carnivore, you're just eating meat, but I think that's pretty simple. And just sort of like the Constitution of the United States, is like, these are the enumerated powers of the government. They don't get to do anything else. Like, anything else is just F off, right? But then people say, oh, no, but we should say what and it sort of gets a bit confusing. But no, anything that's not in here, they can't do. That's sort of what it is. And so anything that's not meat or water, you can't do. So, but to just put more of a stress on it, I just say, think about what not to eat as well, because your meat is what you want to eat. That's what gives you nutrition. That's what's going to give you everything that you need. But you don't want, the trick is not eating the other things, because it's not just that they're not as good for you or you don't have to eat them. It's that you don't want to eat them because they're harmful. So, my hard rule is no plants, no sugar, nothing artificial. And that would go for sauces, seasonings, and drinks as well. And I would include, plants and fungi as well. So it's not just plants. So anything that grows from the ground, I wouldn't eat. And so that's how I think about it. And so I don't use any seasonings. I don't really use sauces. I just drink water and just eat meat. I salt to taste. And that's pretty much it. And I do notice that, if there would be some pepper on something, or maybe some seasonings would get on something if I was at a restaurant, it's not the end of the world, but maybe in 20, 30 minutes, I might get a bit of a stuffy nose, or my face might get a little itchy or something like that. So, it's enough to notice if it's just a little bit, but it's enough to bug me. And it's just like, well, I don't want that. And obviously if you keep doing that, it's going to build up and it's going to build up. And so, it's enough for me to notice and notice that I don't want it. So it's more reaffirming for me that I just want to stay away from these things. And also, you're making me sore, right? If you're an animal in the wild and you're running around and you just feel awesome all the time, and you eat some plant and then you're just sore and stiff and achy, for the next 2 days, you're like, well, screw that. I'm not eating that plant again. And that's exactly what the plant, wants. It wants to deter you. That's its way of telling you to go away. Don't eat me, and so fine. I'm happy to listen to that.
It wants to make you fertilizer, or it basically, plants are the predators. They want to control us. We forget that plants are live organisms, and ultimately their DNA has been around for millions of years, probably longer than us. And so we somehow think, well, we're it's sort of like eating spiders or snakes or alligators, right? If it's like, go out and capture an alligator to bring home and eat, all power to you. But, you might end up to be the food as much as anything else. And plants are no different. And these are really some interesting things. And Dex, carnivore is more sensitive or react faster to non-carnivore foods, which essentially, it's if you're, sort of the strictness of a lion, If lions are actually really strict, because I know I've seen dogs and cats, munch on grass, or bears on berries from time to time, but ultimately, and I know for myself, there are certain things that will cause me to have side effects, more than other things, and so I just sort of be really narrow 99% of the time. But you got to find out, where are you at in this journey, and what are you trying to prove for yourself individually? Because we're only giving information that we have found really valuable. But I can't remember who I was listening to. It might have been Sarah Hallberg, who talks about giving an EpiPen to someone eating peanuts that might be allergic, or kale and insulin. Ultimately, do those things really make sense in our modern world anymore?
Yeah. Well, yeah, true. And I mean, like, that obviously, if you needed an EpiPen for something, even 100 years ago, yeah, you weren't going to make it, and or needing insulin as well. That's a very recent development also. The sensitivity, carnivores being a bit more sensitive to non-carnivore food. Yeah, I have noticed that. I think it's a combination of things. I think it's firstly, you're actually seeing the contrast now, because when we're eating sort of plant things, we're eating a standard American diet. We have all these toxins in our bloodstream all the time, and so we just sort of feel we have this baseline level of crummy that we feel all the time, and so and we just call that normal, and we sort of have ups and downs.
Drugs, and we take over-the-counter drugs,
Yeah.
or something, in order to make us feel okay.
Yeah, and take stimulants like caffeine or whatever. And so we're doing that, and we just sort of feel sort of ups and downs as compared to that baseline level of crummy. And then when you get all this stuff out of your system and you feel exactly how amazing that you should feel all the time, which is shockingly better than I ever thought possible. I don't feel a little better or a lot better. I feel 1,000 times better than I've ever felt in my entire life, even as a professional athlete eating a standard diet, and a mostly meat diet with not that many carbs and certainly not a lot of sugar. And I wasn't drinking during the rugby season, even when I had fallen off of carnivore. So it makes a massive, massive difference. And seeing that contrast is very eye-opening, because then you sort of, you bring something back in. I remember I would sample something would slip in and be like, okay, well, let's just see how it makes me feel. And it would be a very big difference. And I'd be like, wow, I can actually see it. It just drops me down a lot. And, I don't feel as bad as I remember feeling 2 years earlier, even on a normal day, but it's a big drop from where I now feel. And so that's, I can see that contrast, and I don't like it. But also, with any sort of poison, your body builds up a tolerance and a resistance, just like alcohol. And it takes more alcohol to get drunk if you drink regularly.
But
and
it's
so
still doing damage, right? Even though you might feel okay, but it's still doing damage.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so, and so you're building up a bit of a tolerance. And so, but yeah, you may not notice it as much, but of course, it's absolutely damaging you. And so, you're bringing this stuff in. If you're eating it regularly, your body's sort of just getting used to that crummy feeling, and you can sort of, tolerate that a bit more. And then when you get rid of it for a while, then your body's not used to it anymore. And then you reintroduce it, and you get smacked in the face with it. So I think that's why I don't think that there's any sort of, weird allergic, sensitivities that, people that go carnivore have. I think it's just a combination of seeing that contrast, and also just being away from that, stimulus anymore.
Right, less exposure to the things that actually are the antigenic components of inflammation. But the most important part is the fat. The fat protects the glycobiome. When you eat real animal fat, and technically we likely ate raw animal fat a lot for thousands, if not millions of years. And so, but we are capable of eating, I would say the fruits, the fresh fruit, very limited times a year we likely did eat, but it was limited. And we didn't eat it all year round. And we likely didn't eat the seeds that much. We ate the actual fruit, the sugar, which is interesting, because my belief is that simple sugar from time to time is not as harmful as people think. But because most of our standard diets are high in plants, it's like we can go all the way over here. Hey, I only eat animal products, or all the way over here, I only eat plant products. But technically, there likely is a mystery in between, unless there's an allergic component that you don't even know about in what you're eating. But I would say the seeds and nuts are probably the deadliest things that we do. And I've had a number of friends died of cancer, and yet they were labeled as healthy. They were lean and strong, and they were younger. But I would say it absolutely is the deadliest thing of any frequency is eat seeds and nuts. What's your thoughts on fiber?
Fiber. Yeah. So I think that fiber is absolutely, not something that we need. There's zero hard evidence to show that there's any benefit of fiber in the diet, but also there are studies that actually show quite strongly that this causes colon disease. So there's a study that showed the only association between something that we were doing and increased risk of diverticulosis were more fiber that you ate and the more number of bowel motions that you had. So more times you were using your bowels and the more fiber that you're eating, they both generally coincide. Those are the only things, and they actually had a strong association with development of diabetes.
Paul Mason has done a nice talk on this. I know that. And Fiber Menace is really a good one out there. But so what you're saying is that actually fiber causes cancer most likely.
Well, it certainly causes harm, and it causes it's been shown to cause microabrasions in the gut lining, and damage the glycobiome, like you were saying as well. It can scrape that right off, and it causes increased immune response as well. And because you're overworking your colon as well, you're just causing it just to move and to move and to move and to move and move. Eventually, it fails, and I think that's what diverticulosis is. It's the failure of that muscle of the colon. Just like heart failure, you're pumping against a high pressure gradient for too long and the muscle just wears out and you go into heart failure. I think of diverticulosis as colon failure. You're working it too much, and then it just starts to fail.
Well, I always, this is one of a really great, where most people don't, again, back to the glycans. Those are the protective mucinous layer of every layer of our body, every cell of our body. And so when we damage this layer, it now allows the microbes, the lectins, oxalase phytates. Sally Norton and others have talked about this, and you talked, I think, about spinach and kale and lettuce earlier. But basically, these things all have the damaging components. Interesting enough, the tomato plant, the leaves are toxic fast, but the tomato is not. And Adek is bringing the point that the fruit and everything we eat today is nothing what it used to be for sure, no doubt about it. But it is still, again, in our carnivore side, we have to be a little cautious of like it's all this or nothing, because that's where we're going to lose the world on. And now you have to recognize, how do we teach the science of this, which is really critical? I mean, what does the liver do with sugar? What does it do with sugar? And my bet is simple sugar is not the disease causer. It's the complex stuff. But it's still back to the how many meals a day, how many meals a week did we eat 1 million years ago? If you and I had to go hunting or go, hunt and gather, we'd be in trouble. I mean, you might be very good at hunting. I know that Keto Savage and many others, Maria Emmerich loves to hunt with the bow and arrow and things like that. But, I simply, Google Snake River Farms, and they deliver the most amazing steak, and Hudson Farms, the foie gras and all this other stuff. But it's really, really radical in this. How do we continue? And this is, I guess, what's your sort of future dream of your mission in this health and wellness, since you are an MD, and how do you see yourself playing out the future of health and wellness?
Well, I certainly want to obviously continue in neurosurgery, but incorporating that, in that practice. I actually just met a couple from Queensland, who's gentleman's a neurosurgeon there, and he has a practice in spinal surgery mostly, and they have a rehab sort of gym, CrossFit gym sort of rehab thing as well, and they do carnivore as well, and they try to incorporate at least ketogenic, high-fat, meat-based ketogenic diet and even carnivore diet into the recovery of their patients as well. So that's something that I would definitely want to do. There are some indications for surgery that some people just need surgery, and but you can include and incorporate diet and lifestyle modifications as well to optimize those, or maybe even stop them from needing surgery in the first place. I would much rather heal somebody and get them back on their feet without doing surgery on them, even if that that doesn't make me as much money. And obviously, when you're doing procedures and you're doing surgeries, that pays a lot more than office visits. By orders of magnitude. And so it's but that's totally fine with me. And so I have my good friend who's my roommate in medical school. He ended up going into interventional radiology, did his residency at Yale, but now he's sort of starting one of these integrated healthcare practices, trying to getting gyms and coaches and all these sorts of things involved in sort of a holistic health approach down in Reno. And so something like that as well, something that I would like to do, and even in the cancer space, with brain tumors and things like that, people like Thomas Seyfried, he's doing studies with GBMs in mice, and just a ketogenic diet, is actually showing very good results with that. So I think that's very, very important as well, especially for cancer patients, to certainly address these sorts of things. I think it's a bit unethical to not bring these things up when patients ask me, is there something else I can do? What can I do to help with this? And I just, even though it's not, I have to tell them, I'm like, look, this is not the department's guidelines. These are not the neurosurgical department here, guidelines or suggestions. This is my own personal recommendation from my own research, and I'm just take that for what it is, and I have to give you resources to look at, and then you make your own decision. But I don't think it's ethical to not bring these things up and not to tell people about that, because I've seen it help significantly.
Well, you're down under, and I know I've been reported to my medical board. I've been reported to the medical school, told to not talk about this, and I've interviewed Gary Fettke, and I know, and I think Finney in South Africa, I think it was also taken to task about sharing this. Have you had anyone in your medical profession say anything, or do you have a little bit of fear in this?
Yeah, so I am conscious of that, and the medical board here does keep a very close eye on things, and so you do have to watch your step with them, because if they think that you're doing something that's endangering patients, like they will be down on you like a ton of bricks, which is totally fair. Like I'm happy for that, but and because of that, I do things in a very careful way, and I talk about these things in a very specific way, saying, look, these are not the official guidelines. This is not the official recommendations. This is my personal things, but it's based in science. Here are the studies. Here's the research. Here are the groups using this as a treatment method around the world. Here are their results, and you take a look at it and you do what you want to do. And so it's been fine from that standpoint. The people in my department have actually been very interested in my approach to diet and lifestyle, and a lot of them have come up to me and talked to me and asked me about these things. And several of them have taken up a carnivore diet as a result of this. And I've spoken to them about Dr. Seyfried's work as well. I was like, we should get like a trial going with our GBM patients, and see if we could do something. I'm starting to get a bit of interest in that. I'm hoping we can get like an actual trial going to see, maybe, get some of these people on like at least a high fat ketogenic diet, or, even better, a carnivore diet, and see how these people do, after a surgery, just getting some of these people on that and see how they do. So I've been okay in my department, but I have actually seen that when I first came down here, I was helping out with on a general surgery rotation, and so I was talking to this patient about, they wanted to, they were in under gastroenterology, and gastroenterology asked us to consult for surgery. This patient had Crohn's. It wasn't responding to medications properly, and so they wanted us to consider surgery, start chopping out chunks of bowel. And so I went and was assessing her for that and talking to her about it. And she was just saying, she's like, I really don't want surgery. Like, I was just like, it's just, it's just going to be surgery after surgery after surgery. Like, I really wish I didn't have to do this. And I was just like, well, there actually, is data and information out there showing that things like an elemental diet actually, can get people into remission better than steroids, and keep people in remission much longer than all these different, steroids and new agents. So, if you wanted to approach this that way, you could try these different dietary changes and see how that goes with you. And you can always do surgery. Surgery, it's not like, you don't get surgery now, like you're out of the club, you don't get to come back. If you do this, and it doesn't work, you don't like it, or, whatever, you can always come back. We can always do surgery later. And they were really interested in that. And they asked me, and I said, look, here's the research, here are the studies, here are the papers, here's some resources. Take a look at it. Let me know what you decide. Some little sniveling punk was like listening outside of the curtains on the gastro team, and he overheard this. And instead of like talking to me and like, because I was giving her, paper after paper. I was like, look at this paper, look at this paper, look at this paper. Here's a talk by this person. Here's a lecture by this person. You look at these sorts of things. And, instead of like asking me like, oh, hey, what are those papers? What are those things? Whatever. He just went and like told his boss. And again, instead of, actually, speaking to me like an adult, he went to, the head of my department, and it was just like, oh, we're going to report this guy to the medical board. It's just like, you haven't even checked to see if what I was saying was true.
Shoot first, ask questions later.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the method of medicine. But I'm always suspicious, even on our side. Let's prove it. Let's write the paper. Let's get the money to support it. But ultimately, a lot of these things are about a product or a pill, or a keto supplement or something. When ultimately, I think what we're saying here is simply going to a high meat, zero plant-based diet is actually the healthiest thing someone could do to cure their current problem. We got to be careful about even the promises we make in this world of, it's something that's going to help. And I know for myself, I herniated a disc 15 years ago. I went right to the surgeon. I said, can you fix this right now? Now, my guy said, you know what? Let's just wait. Okay. And thankfully he did that. But I would tell you that because I went from there, I went paleo, then keto, then carnivore, never a back problem, never a hernia, nothing again. It's been amazing. And I don't do any special exercises or anything. And I still do some light lifting and things like that. But, I think that this is amazing. But the doctor that told me not to talk about it was diabetic, missing some legs. He then asked me, can you tell me about this dietary change? So, I think ultimately, because there's such pressure on all of us in our natural communities, on what do we follow, what do we lead with, and how do we learn and teach this in a way that really is game changing. Tell us a little bit about what publications or books you're working on, and so we can look forward to more of Dr. Chaffee. Zero. What's a Zero Plant MD or Plant? What do you do?
Plant free.
MD. Tell us about your books or your writings.
Yeah. So yeah, well, at the moment I'm working on a book. It's been a bit difficult to find the time for it, just with work and everything like that. But it's basically making the argument, obviously, that we are carnivores. A bit of my story, my lead up into it, and but also just making that argument and coming at it from different angles. And like you say, like how do we fight against this inertia of the last 50 years? And so that's sort of what I try to do with this book. It's like saying, oh no, look, cholesterol was never a real thing. Like showing the history of that, showing the fraud behind it, showing the actual data and what we know. Looking at plants and how toxic they are and how we really don't want to eat them, how harmful they are, the historical record on native humans and how they lived very healthy lives as carnivores as well, and then making and various chapters along those lines, just making this argument, but then the overarching theme being making the argument that the so-called chronic diseases that we treat as a mainstay in medicine now, the heart disease, diabetes, even most cancers, and certainly obesity, that these are not diseases per se, but toxicities and malnutrition. So toxic buildup of species inappropriate diet and a lack of species specific nutrition. So too much plants, not enough meat. And I think that I can make a very strong case for that. And and if we remove these toxic agents, that these diseases go away. And and that's sort of proof positive that this is a poisoning toxicity model as opposed to a disease model, right? Because you have this stimulus and you're getting this response. You take away the stimulus and the response goes away. That's pretty straightforward. Or malnutrition, right? If you're not developing properly and your kids could develop autism, like say if they have a carnitine deficiency and their brain just won't develop properly. That's malnourishment. They're not getting carnitine from meat, and they're not making enough of it. Most people make enough of it. Not everyone does. And if you're not getting it from meat, then your brain's not going to develop properly. You're going to get a specific form of autism. But even as we age, our brains are made out of fat, and and if we're not eating fat and cholesterol, we're not going to be building and maintaining our brain, and it's going to sort of decay, and we're just going to get age-related atrophy of our brain, and we're going to develop Alzheimer's and dementia and have other problems. So these are things that they're ultimately preventable by either omitting these toxic elements or providing the proper nutrition for our body. And so that's the main theme of that book, is just making that argument and trying to make people aware that they can really take control of their own health and their lives going forward.
Sharing the conversation of your success, which ultimately, because Ken talks about this, Ken Berry, Dr. Berry, and many others, because so long as a physician, do as I say, not as I do, is part of the challenge in life, right? And so it used to be that we'd be doing this, or we'd be doing this, and if you think of the world, I was down in Sarasota. There's a band playing. It's got Budweiser, or whatever. It's sort of inviting everyone into the amusement park, but recognizing that we all have to really be the strong-willed ones through the coaching and cheerleading of people like yourself. That is so critical in this amazing world of life. Are you going to be giving any talks in the coming months or year, or where can people continue to go visit you and find you with your website? And people still like to meet people. This is nice, but where can we go to really see a live human being share their conversation ideas?
Yeah, so I'll actually be speaking at KetoCon in Austin this July. So it'll be like July 8th, 9th, and 10th. So I'll be on the main stage of one of the keynote talks, I believe on the Friday, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's the Friday, if not the Saturday. But then also we'll be on a special carnivore panel on that Sunday as well. So I'll be up there twice, and then I'll obviously be around and watching other talks and meeting people as we go. And then I'll be speaking at Low Carb Down Under in Gold Coast in Queensland in Australia, and that's going to be coming up. It hasn't been officially announced yet, but it should be going on later in the year, probably in October. And so that will be another one I'll be speaking at as well. And then they're going to try to do another Low Carb Down Under here more locally here in Western Australia around Perth as well. So I'll be doing that. And then, obviously I put out sort of 2 to 3 videos a week on my YouTube channel and the audio version on my podcast as well.
And we have these low carb. What is low carb?
Yeah.
What is LCHF? What, and how do we share that in a world that isn't going to go like glassy eyed and like, what the heck is that, right?
Yeah, I think it's more of a terminology because people would get scared off by keto, ketosis, ketogenic because they associate that with ketoacidosis, and which of course it's worlds apart. It's not the same thing. It just shares part of the same word, but so I think that is a way of saying ketogenic diet without using that terminology. And so Vinny Tortorich, he does the no grains, no sugar, NSNG, so no sugar, no grains. That's his sort of thing. But what he said that he came up with that because what he was saying was ketogenic, but people were very much against ketogenic because they thought that meant ketoacidosis. So he said, okay, how can I say the same thing without scaring people? And so he came up with that. So I think there's just the low carb, high fat idea is similar to that, but also I think it's a bit more specific because you can be on a ketogenic diet and all that is the lack of carbohydrates. So you could just be eating anything else, really. It doesn't mean you're eating meat, doesn't mean you're eating enough fat either. It just means that you're not eating carbohydrates. But so a low carb, high fat diet is really telling you that you don't want the carbs and you want, but fat is good and you want to eat the fat as well.
What about how do you discuss and what's your thoughts on how many meals a day, fasting, and how do you have that conversation and what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't think that we necessarily need to fast. I think you automatically will eat less, but I don't really consider that fasting. I think that people should just eat when they're hungry and eat to satiation. So because our hunger signals change very dramatically on a carnivore diet or even a ketogenic diet, just because you're signaling your hunger signals change dramatically. And you can actually listen to them. So they actually sound different. But when you go by taste, if it tastes good, that means your body wants those nutrients. And so they'll actually stop tasting good. So I'd say just keep eating. When meat tastes good, just eat it and keep eating it until it stops tasting good and you stop enjoying it. And then, maybe try eating, a couple times a day just to make sure that your body's not asking for more. Because you're eating high density nutrition, and you're eating to satiation, so you're filling up all the way, you're just going to eat less often. You're not going to need to eat as much or as often. And so I find that I tend to eat, usually once a day, sometimes twice a day, especially if I'm working out a lot. And then my body wants more nutrition and I can't just eat as much as my body wants in one sitting. And so my body will ask for food more than once a day. But I don't specifically deprive myself of nutrition when my body's asking for it. And that's what I think fasting is when you're hungry and you want to eat, but you're saying, no, I'm not going to eat because I'm fasting until this point. So I don't do that unless I have to because I'm stuck at work and I can't eat. But I do tend to eat, but people will say this like, oh no, actually you're only eating in this 4-hour window, or maybe you're eating just, once a day or something like that. So you are fasting. I'm like, well, not really, because I'm not depriving myself of food. I'm not stopping myself from eating when I'm hungry. I eat when I'm hungry. And just because of how I eat, it tends to be once a day, sometimes twice a day.
We have all these labels that most of the time I just go like, I don't know what the heck that means anyway. But if you're eating a high carb diet, your belly is full of carbs digesting always.
Mm.
And so that's the biggest, most amazing thing to the story is that the bucket, the stomach to the rectum, as long as it has carbohydrates inside of it, it's either fermenting or digesting and extracting the sugars, what little protein is in a plant, what little fats are in a plant, but it's also getting the plant antigens and the phytochemicals, which are basically, that's why this term fasting, my bet is, again, if we ate once a week, thousands of years ago, we're lucky to do that, that is fasting. But ultimately, because our healthy lifestyle, I eat healthy, organic, clean, which are words that I don't even know what they mean anymore. It's a very confusing sense. But when I saw Sarah Hallberg died of lung cancer, and she was a healthy person, exercised, ate healthy, and my best friend Dave died of cancer at 52, I now realize that what you're saying is the most important thing is that plants are the poison. And meat and fatty meat is really it. What's your daily, what is it you eat? What is it you cook for your girlfriend or your girlfriend cooks for you? So what can we inspire people to eat like Dr. Chaffee?
Yeah. Something like, 98, 99% of what I eat is beef and usually steak. So, ribeye was always my go-to, but like it's literally doubled in price over the past year here in Australia. So it's like, okay, screw that. So I'm just getting New Yorks now, which are great. And those are still, they're literally half the price of the ribeyes here now. It's absolutely insane. So I just do that, or I get briskets and chuck steaks, anything you want really. But I like beef. I really like beef, and most of the time I'll do New Yorks, and so I'll get like a whole strip loin, or I get like a whole case of them from Costco, which you'll get a number of these things in the case, and I'll keep those in the fridge for a while actually, and so I'll actually wet age it when in the cryovac packs. If you leave them in there in the refrigerator, that's wet aging them. So a lot of these very nice restaurants, they'll wet age and then dry age. So that's wet aging, just leaving them in the cryovac pack. It's pretty easy. So I'll just get a lot of these things in bulk and I'll throw them in there because they're just wet aging. So I actually want them to sit there for a while because they're actually getting better as they age. And then I'll open them up and I'll cut them up into steaks. And then I'll salt them just as much salt as I would want on a steak. So that varies with different people. And I'll put them up on drying racks, and I'll just put those in the refrigerator as well. And the salt will soak in and dry out the meat a bit. And it just concentrates the flavor a little more, dries it out a bit, and it browns a lot better. It cooks a lot nicer. And it it really improves the flavor. That was a trick that I learned from Alton Brown, who's like a celebrity chef. He's written a bunch of books. He's a very interesting guy because he'll actually talk about like the chemistry of cooking and what different chemical reactions are happening with between these different foods and why that changes the flavor and these sorts of things. So it's actually kind of interesting to watch him as well. And so that was a trick that he did. And since I started doing that, it was just a game changer for me. I do that for all meat, fish, chicken, anything. I bought a couple ducks from.
Do you wet age and dry age your lettuce by chance?
Well, you
wet aging and dry aging lettuce, right?
Yeah.
It's cool. Wet age and dry age become putrid, but meat becomes better. If that is like a simple answer to the universe, I don't know what is, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, everyone vilifies meat. They say, "Oh my God, it can go bad," and all these sorts of things. It's like, how often have you seen, lettuce keep its shape, or spinach? It turns to mush right away. There's a big vegan push in Australia right now, especially in the schools, and there's a lot of schools that are mandatory vegan. Like you are not allowed to send meat with your child for lunch, and then other ones that aren't that way, you have to send a certain amount of fruits and vegetables with them, or they will send the kid home, and which is a bit intrusive, I think. And then there's like these ad campaigns going like, oh, don't just be careful, parents, like, don't send your kid to school with meat in their lunch because it's not going to be in the refrigerator, and it'd be like hours until lunch, and it could just go rotten. I was like, well, it never has before in the history of humanity, so why the hell is it going to start now?
I think in New York, I heard you can't send your child with whole milk.
Oh, really?
sort of
Yeah.
everything's a low fat,
Yeah.
which is trying to kill us all in one way or another. And I always say that's the masters. The masters who eat the Wagyu A5 steak are feeding the masses mush. So the mush keeps us meek. And that's the amazing, crazy story to this, is it
Yeah,
not?
I'm sure chocolate milk is just fine though, isn't it? As opposed to whole milk.
What,
It's like, I said, I'm
what,
sure that chocolate milk is probably just fine though, but they have a problem with whole milk, so they want low fat, high sugar, and
so how do you treat yourself or your partner? Do you guys get a dessert like ever? Where do you fall on that in just sort of the basics?
yeah. No, I mean, the steak is my treat. Like I absolutely love every single one of those things. And when I finish eating that, I eat until I'm satisfied, and I keep eating.
It's lobster. It doesn't give it very clear. I
Yeah.
don't know why, but it was lobster burger and blue cheese and
Okay.
butter was my
Oh,
lunch
nice.
yesterday. I mean, that was
Oh,
my dessert.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just like, that is my treat. I said to my dad once, um, that doing this, it just feels like it's my birthday every day, because on your birthday, you get like the meal that you want. Like there's just like the thing that you want. That's just like your favorite thing. And there's no guilt. There's no trouble. You just like, you get what you want. It's your birthday. Treat yourself. Well, every time I had that special birthday meal, it was always like, just a big ass steak with like, butter, maybe like a, lobster tail on the side or some prawns or something like that. But it was always centered around a steak and meat in general. And so now every single day I'm making an absolutely amazing, 30-day wet aged, 15-day dry aged, steak. And it's just incredible every single time. And it's just like every day is my birthday, because every day I'm having my birthday steak. So yeah, no, I don't ever feel like I'm missing out on treats or anything like that.
So I make an ice cream, and but a really interesting way to do it is it's cream, eggs, add butter, salted sweet butter. Remember, sweet butter is butter, but it has a sweet taste to it. So, and I know, so I eat those steaks, and it has a sweetness to it, because ultimately I didn't know this, but the majority of sugars are actually not sweet tasting.
Yeah, yeah,
And most people don't realize that get back to that sweet apple. Well, a week before that, it wasn't sweet, right? And then a week later, it's like rotten, right? And it'll kill you. And that's the kind of the part of this. Do you have you mentioned Alton Brown? Do you have any other favorite carnivore cooking masters to share their methods of cooking?
There was, my mom loves cooking, and she's a fantastic cook. I mean, she's absolutely brilliant at it, and she loves reading. She loves books in general, and she loves cooking. And so naturally, she has a lot of books on cooking. She literally has over 500 cookbooks, and she has read and used all of them. And so, and this was something that when she went carnivore, when she and my dad went carnivore, this was quite hard for her, because she was just like, I'm not going to get to do any of these really nice things. And so that was really hard for her. But then she actually started, finding people that, cook with fire and cook meat and do all these different sorts of recipes in different ways with meat. And so she started being able to, focus her interests on that. I can't remember the guy's name, but he is an Argentinian chef, and he does these pretty amazing cooks where they'll take an entire cow and it'll be split up, and it'll be up on like a big rack, and sort of tipped over at 30 degrees, and it'll have a fire built up underneath it, and it will cook for 24 hours, and it'll just cook like that for 24 hours. And it comes out just perfect and amazing and juicy. And I've seen the finished results of this, and it's mouth watering just watching this. And so, and this guy did one, I saw pictures of it online, where he had 100 cows cooking at the same time. And so it was like, I don't know what army he was feeding, but it was an impressive sight. They had all of these things cooking at the same time as going around tending all these fires. So things like that. My mom has found me a few cookbooks that are very, very meat centric and meat based. And for me, I do tend to keep it quite simple, because I'm not using a lot of seasonings or anything. I'll do roasts, I'll do briskets. I like smoking things, and the steaks that I do, those just turn out so well that like I don't feel that anything needs to be improved upon with those. I got some ducks from Costco as well. It's the same thing, salted them, let them rest for a couple of days, and then just roasted them, and they were just absolutely amazing as well. So it works for everything.
How do you capture the fat from the meat that you're cooking? Because I know for myself that I actually cook my ribeye in a pan under the broiler with butter and salt on it, and I usually cut it up so that it really browns. I mean, really, I like black and blue and do it that way, but it captures the fat, which is kind of part of the problem with barbecuing. It loses a lot of fat. Do you have any secrets to your fat saving fat? Like save fat, right?
Yeah, fat conservationists. Yeah, and So I often cook in a pan, for just that reason, and that'll keep that in there. And I like searing it because I sort of cut my steaks up into what I think is going to be like a sort of a 1 or 2 steaks per day sort of thing. So I'll have like a big fat steak, like a 3-inch thick steak. So I'll have to sear the sides as well, obviously. So you'll have like a bit of like lard or tallow in the pan, and then I'll sort of sear on each side, and some of the fat will render out as well. And then I'll just sort of like cook it, if it's sort of room temperature, cook it sort of 3 minutes on each side, and that'll give it like a good sort of rare but good sear as well. So it has like a really nice sort of crispy crust, because because I've dried it a bit, it has this almost like a crispy, crunchy shell on the outside, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It's almost like it's been deep fried, and it's just like this crunchy outside.
So you don't cut that. I know a lot of people that dry age in these large dry age rooms will tend to cut the outer layers. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So if you're doing like a proper dry age, if you're dry aging the whole loin, that's something you probably have to do. So I do it sort of differently. I think people call it like a dry brining, where you just salt it and leave it out there, so it doesn't rot.
Essentially, brining it. Brine is that what you said? A dry brine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you salt it, and then it dries it out. So it won't go bad. It's not growing bacteria. The worst that'll happen, it'll turn into beef jerky, which is great. I love beef jerky. So there's no harm done. But yeah, so you don't need to trim any of it off. If it's in there for like a big thick one, I've even had it for up to 2 weeks, and it still tastes outstanding, but it's just sort of a little more dry than maybe you would want. And but that's it. It doesn't go bad. And so, but it also gives that really nice crispy crust as well. And then you take the fat off the pan, then you just pour it back on the steak when you get it on your plate.
Now, your time is very valuable, and we're having a good time. Are you okay for going a little bit longer, and you just kind of go like this? And you got let's see, a couple of quick questions. I've got Instagram on Dr. Kiltz, MD, sort of taking this, but we got YouTube and Facebook here. Eleanor asks about hydration. We've got a couple of questions. Let me get to those and ask for Dr. Chaffee. What are your thoughts on hydration? How much water are you drinking a day, and what should you be drinking?
Yeah, well, I'm a big fan of water. I know some people in the carnivore space, they think that, well, maybe you shouldn't drink all that much water because it might suppress your hunger. You're not going to eat as much. I just feel better when I drink a lot of water. I've always noticed that throughout my athletic career, that if I drink a gallon of water, I feel good. If I drink 2 gallons of water, I feel incredible. And so that was just me, but that was also training and performing at a high level. Now I'm not exerting that much, so I probably don't need 2 gallons. But I definitely feel better when I have more than a gallon. So when I'm between like sort of 4 and 6 liters, I'm feeling much better. Sometimes it's hard, like if I'm just at work and I don't really have access to water and it's just busy and I'm running around, maybe I'll only have, a liter or something like that during work. And then I'll try to pound down 2 or 3 liters when I get home to try and catch up. But I always feel better if I have more water. And yeah, it is just water. I do try to eat or try not to drink water within like an hour or so or two of eating. So I'll try to have like an empty stomach, just because, this is something like, and people said before, like, that you can sort of water down your stomach acid. Maybe you're not going to digest things as well. I don't know one way or the other, but like, it doesn't sound completely unreasonable. So, I try to do that as well.
I mean, I drink a mineral water because I like the taste of mineral and I love a carbonation personally. It's interesting. I was talking to a friend who got me Topo Chico water from Mexico. Interesting enough, it's sold by or bartered by Coca-Cola, and I was commenting how it almost feels, and it's like a Coke. And I said, this is really interesting marketing in the world we're in today. It's that feel of something that because I used to drink Coke like years ago, like all the time. And then I went to Diet Coke, and I don't recommend any of those things today. Let's see. Anna Victoria, a 16-year-old cousin has epilepsy. As a neurosurgeon, have you seen a carnivore diet improve symptoms of epilepsy?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. This is something that we've used as doctors for nearly 100 years. It's still the practice at Johns Hopkins to put people on a ketogenic diet if they have epilepsy. I honestly think that it should be the first line of treatment for someone with epilepsy. Unfortunately, it's almost never used at all. I've talked to so many people with epilepsy and having different seizure issues with seizures, and I always sort of ask them, it's just like, has your neurologist ever mentioned this, whatever. Like, they've never even talked about it, they've never mentioned it, and it really blows my mind, because this is actually, this is a well-known mainstay in the treatment of epilepsy, and it has been for literally a century,
probably thousands of years if you think about it. So we didn't just learn this stuff 100 years ago. None of this is new.
Right, yeah.
Ancient, right? Ancient.
Yeah. And just a ketogenic diet has been used therapeutically for epilepsy and migraines for literally 100 years. And for
those that might not know, that keto is a high fat, and really what we're talking about is high animal fat. I mean, that's the carnivore side of things. It's high animal fat, and ultimately most human diets have about 20% protein anyway. What's your thoughts on plant proteins?
No, they're not very good. I think it's very misleading. And so, a protein is not a protein is not a protein, and so when you're getting, and if you're getting, labels are very misleading and just flat out fraudulent, really, because when you look at the amount of protein that's in plants like wheat or whatever, that is not, it may not even be protein, because they calculate things by crude nitrogen. So they just calculate the amount of nitrogen that's in something. Well, all of that nitrogen may not be as part of protein. They just assume it is, but that's not necessarily the case. And then, even if it has 30 grams of protein in it, like, say, if it's coming from wheat, well, 80% of the protein in wheat is gluten. Gluten is not usable as protein by your body. You cannot use that as protein. So 80% of that is out the window anyway. So there's only, out of 30 grams of wheat protein, there's really only 6 that are maybe going to be usable. So it's a very different thing. And so, the bioavailability of these things, the crude nitrogen versus true protein, it's just very, very, very misleading. And also, there are a lot of things in plants that block your enzymes from your pancreas to break down proteins and absorb them in the first place, or to block their absorption. So even if you have usable proteins, it will prevent your body from even absorbing them. And so when you're actually eating animal-based proteins, and you're eating, these different, plants and vegetables, that can actually stop your body from breaking down animal proteins and absorbing them as well. So, anything to do with plants and protein is going to be a bad
I think
combination.
I think viruses are made out of glycoproteins. So next they'll be packaging coronavirus glycoproteins, eliminating the gland and selling us a viral protein, like they're trying to sell us, I think, bug proteins.
Yeah, yeah,
The next one, but we are easily manipulated by the masters who basically eat 8.5 Wagyu steak because the masters know that is the healthiest, and that's why meat, especially ribeye, is very expensive because it's just another one of those. Barbara Schultz, thanks Barbara for being here today. Asked about pounds of meat that you eat, and how do you sort of define how much you're eating?
Yeah, so I don't weigh my food. I don't count calories. I don't count macros. I think that if you are eating what you're naturally supposed to eat, what you're biologically designed to eat, that you can just listen to your body. And so, if you need a calculator to figure out what to eat, you're probably eating the wrong thing. And so, nature's natural. It just happens. And so I just listen to my body. When I do that, if I'm just sort of doing my normal work and not exercising, I'll eat roughly around 2.5 pounds of meat a day. Very fatty meat, though. I eat like 80% of my calories come from animal fat. When I'm working out a lot, my body just demands more, and I stack on muscle very, very quickly when I listen to my body and eat appropriately. I still have to eat the requisite amount, and at that point, I'll probably double that. So I eat 4 to 5 pounds of meat in a day if I'm lifting heavy and working out heavily. So it really just depends on my activity level. But on a normal day, just to maintain, my 6'3", 230-pound frame, it's usually about 2.5 pounds a day. If I'm working out and I'm putting on a couple of pounds of muscle a week, which is a very normal thing for me if I'm working out regularly, it'll be like 4 to 5 pounds.
Yeah, and I kind of do the fist way. I'm amazed how I often cook more than I eat because our eyes, certainly it's like, oh, and then we do it, and when I'm full, I just package it up and put it away, and often have it as a snack the next day, 2 or 3. Yeah. But a fistful is about right. That I found helpful in all of this. How do you? So again, thanks to everyone for sharing, and Dr. Chaffee, thank you very, very much for being here again today. For people who are just kind of getting on board on carnivore, where should they go? How do they just keep on the journey and keep moving forward?
Well, yeah, I think that just the main thing is just keep watching channels like yourself, and different videos. Just try to learn as much about it as you can. I think everyone's sort of done like some beginner videos. I've done carnivore for beginners. I know Ken Berry has as well. I'm sure Sean Baker has, and you might have as well. And so see all these sorts of things. Try to arm yourself with information. There you go.
I would keep it simple. I mean, like you eat steak. I eat ribeye, and I occasionally make my ice cream, but mostly it's just that I don't. It's that once in a while. But I'm in a different part of where I'm at. But I'm sorry. Keep on going. But it's finding this in this space.
Yeah, and just sort of learning as much as you can about it, and being comfortable with that. And then when you get going, just recognize that you don't have to be perfect right out of the gate. Keep it simple. Just sort of focus on just eating meat and not eating other things. And if you slip up and you have some pizza or some ice cream or God forbid a salad, that you can just hop back on. You're just like, oh, I messed up. Okay, great. Just hop back on. There's a lot of people who get discouraged or feel that they're just not allowed in the club if they eat rice one time when they've been carnivore. I've had some friends on the rugby team. They started doing carnivore and they were like, I've never felt stronger. I never felt better. I just felt amazing. But then I went to my mom's house for dinner over the weekend and had some rice. So I was like, I ate some rice. So I guess that's it. And they were so dejected. I was just like, you can just start back up again, right? And he was like, oh, really? Like, you really hadn't even thought of that, And it's just like, yeah, just get going again. So it's okay to slip up. We're all human. We're going to mess
We
up.
allow sinners into the
Yeah, exactly.
house,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I always say that. Listen, we're all humans on this journey, and we're bringing everyone in on the conversation, and we want to support everyone, and not like, oh my God, you messed up, and see you later. But it really needs to be we're all on the journey, and support and positivity. And I always say faith is first, and inspirations by watching Dr. Chaffee and so many others. And anything that we fight always fights back. And that's why I don't do contact sports anymore, because I got hurt too much in this. So exercise and working out. Okay, I want to go carnivore, but I just want to sort of go for a walk in life and not work out. How would you advise as a health and wellness expert and coach?
Yeah. Well, I think the number one important thing is the diet, and everything else is a function of your diet, and you'll get a lot more out of your life and your activity, if you're on, a true human diet and just eating meat and drinking water, and you're going to feel great, and you'll probably actually want to go and do things physically because you'll just physically feel better, but you don't have to. I don't have time. I just physically don't have time to work out the way I want to, and so maybe I go to the gym once every few weeks now. That's hard for me. Being someone who's played high level sports since I was 14. I was training in a professional MMA gym, in a fighter's gym, since I was my 14th birthday with UFC champions and people going for the UFC championship. And so that's weird to me to not be working out for 6 or 8 hours a day. I don't have that time, but I don't have 6 or 8 hours a month to work out. But my physique is maintained and my health is maintained, and even my strength and my athleticism is maintained because of this diet. And so when I do get to the gym, my weights don't actually change all that much. I don't really go down. I'm not making huge gains or anything like that because I'm not going to the gym for a few weeks at a time. But I'm not going backwards really. So do what you can, do what time allows, and do what you enjoy. Try to get outside, try to enjoy the sunshine, try to get out in the fresh air, enjoy the life, enjoy nature. If you want to go on hikes, go for walks, whatever you enjoy. But I think it really does start with the diet, and then things will build up from there.
What's your now? I know this is probably hard in your current business. What's your thoughts on naps and rest?
Oh my God, I wish I could have. I really wish I could nap like all the time. Sleep is so important, and it's really important for the brain as well. There's a gosh, what is he a professor of? There's like neuropsychology or something like that. Anyway, he's a professor at Berkeley, and he wrote a book all about sleep, and he's a sleep expert, and he was saying that if you average less than 6 hours of sleep per night, you're 6 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's. And the way I think about this is that obviously when your neurons are firing, they're getting damaged, and our neurotransmitters, when they break down, the breakdown products of our neurotransmitters are actually neurotoxic. So they're actually toxic to the cells that have produced them and broken them down. And so if they're not turning off and they're not resting and they're not rebuilding or repairing, they're getting damaged, and eventually they will die. And so if you're not getting enough sleep, these things are on too often, so they're getting damaged more, and you don't have as much time to repair them. So that's bad. But also, if you're not getting enough fat, DHA, EPA, cholesterol, all the very long chain fatty acids, like 20 and 22 chain fatty acids that only exist in meat, and we don't really make ourselves. If we're not getting that from meat, we're not going to be able to get the building blocks up to our brain to rebuild them. So but we need both, right? So you need to have enough fat, you need to have enough concrete for your workers to pour a foundation, and then you've got to have time for the workers to be on the job site. So you need to get enough sleep, and you need to have the building materials for them as well. So yeah, sleep is very important.
So I found on Carnivore, I'm tired more.
Oh, really?
Now, okay, the reason is because when you're on the plants, so much of it is an upper, and we are meant to rest more. No other animal in the universe is going all day, all day, all day. Ain't happening. So I take 1 to 3 naps a day, 10 minutes each. Amazing. I go to bed early, get up early. I have more energy than ever, but when I feel tired, I just take it and take that nap, because I think it is, as you said, it's the brain resetting. It's the ATP rejuvenating. But a lot of it is because I don't eat the things that actually were the uppers that is keeping us going, and our force in our modern world that you got to go, 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 go in order to succeed and make money. And money is the misery of the world. And I would say that with meat, we make men, mommies, and more masters in life. But, I think you're right. Sleep and rest more, but you'll get plenty of it. And, it's like even a 5 or 10 minute meditative moments, I think, are really valuable for all of us. So, but Dr. Chaffee, God bless you. Thank you so much for taking an hour and plus with Kiltz. And again, what's your website, and where do people find you?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I had a great time as always. So my website is thecarnivorelife.com. It's sort of currently under construction, but that'll be up and going soon. My YouTube channel is just Anthony Chaffee MD, and I have a lot of different videos on there, probably around 60 videos now, with a range of different topics. I have my Instagram page is again Anthony Chaffee MD, and I post a lot of things from YouTube. I also put sort of blog posts and updates there with different messages and tips and advice for diet and exercise. And then Facebook, just Anthony Chaffee. Twitter is just Anthony.Chaffee. I don't use that as much, but yeah, I am on there. And then and that's pretty much it. Yeah, YouTube's the main one. And then my podcast is the Plant Free MD, and that's on any podcast platform.
This is socialized medicine at its very best, if you think about it, right? It's social media. It's taking it out of the hands of the experts and it's putting into the hands of those that, we're all responsible for our own health and wellness. And, my goal in life is actually to share more of how we can learn from experts like Dr. Chaffee, and all you need to do is Google it and you'll find it. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll get, it's like they want you to cook more, by the way, online. And so more of that is better. So again, God bless. Thanks to everyone for joining us. Dr. Rob Kiltz, and keep sharing your stories. Take care.
Thanks.